I'm Karen de Blasio, the HMIS subject matter expert in the SNAPS office, and I'm going to discuss HMIS data collection with you today. The intent of this presentation is to provide an overview of the data collection requirements for projects funded under the COC program interim rule, to describe when data must be collected from clients, and for recipients to consider what they need to do to prepare for data collection under the newly published 2014 HMIS data standards. Please recognize that this information is not comprehensive, and you can talk with your HMIS lead and review the 2014 HMIS Data Standards Guidebook to obtain additional detail about the data collection requirements for COC program-funded projects. HMIS stands for Homeless Management Information System. HMIS is our locally operated, and it is the responsibility of the COC to both select an HMIS software and to designate an agency as the HMIS lead to oversee the day-to-day management of the HMIS. HUD has published HMIS data standards that detail the data elements that each HMIS must include in order to fully capture data about people experiencing homelessness. All homeless assistance projects in the Continuum are required to enter some level of information about the projects themselves or the people they serve, but COC-funded projects have additional data collection requirements. The data collection requirements for both groups, those funded by HUD and those not, are specified in the HMIS data standards. The HMIS data standards were first released in 2004, but have been recently updated this year. Please note that this presentation reflects the data collection requirements that will be in effect starting October 1st, 2014. So in a few cases, some of the data elements described may not need to be collected until that point. Currently, HMIS software vendors are updating their HMIS software to be compliant with the 2014 HMIS data standards. The revised standards are the first ever joint release between HUD, the VA, and HHS, and each federal partner, including HUD, will also release a companion program-specific manual that provides further instructions for the project it funds. Before we discuss which data elements must be collected by the COC program-funded projects, we need to look at 5 points of time when data are required to be collected: record creation, project entry, update, annual assessment, and project exit. Some data may only be required to be collected during one of these phases, while others will be collected during multiple phases. Record creation is the point when the program participant is first entered into an HMIS. Key identifiers for the program participant, such as name, date of birth, and social security number, are entered at this point. This information may later be edited to correct data entry errors or to reflect changes, but a recipient is not required to update these fields at a later point. Note that this is a bit different than project entry. Some data elements need to be tied to the date the program participant enters a project, referred to as project entry. If the program participant enrolls in a different project, that project would also have to collect the specified information at the point of entry into that specific project. So some data elements must be collected at multiple points during an enrollment in order to show changes over time. The data collection stage for information collected while the client is enrolled, but before the program participant has exited the program, is called update. Update records are created for some data elements, such as client location, physical disability, domestic violence, during an enrollment only if the information changes. An update always means that a new record is created and that records that reflect the client's previous responses, the responses they may have given at project entry or earlier updates, are preserved. We don't want to get rid of those. Continuum projects are required to collect some data elements, income and sources, non-cash benefits, health insurance, as part of an annual assessment. An annual assessment is a special kind of update, one that takes place every year within 30 days of the anniversary of the program participant's project entry date. Lastly, the project exit stage identifies information collected as the program participant is exiting a project and must always reflect the program participant's circumstances on the project exit date. As with the project entry stage, some data elements are collected only at exit, for instance, project exit date and destination, while others are collected at earlier points in the enrollment as well. The HMIS Data Standards Manual identifies required collection points for each data element. If you are ever uncertain as to how frequently a data element should be collected, please consult with your HMIS system administrator. These 5 data elements are required in order to create a record in an HMIS for a program participant. Since the type of information typically does not change over time, these elements are not required to be collected beyond record creation. However, if you do have an update to the record, such as confirmation of veteran status or corrected date of birth, then those updates should be entered into your HMIS. Since these data elements are not unique to a specific project, it is possible they will already be entered into the HMIS at one point when the record is first created in the system. These data elements are required to be collected at project entry from all program participants served in the COC program-funded projects. Project entry date is a critical data element, as well as other data collected at project entry is then associated with this date. The other project status data elements define household relationships and different aspects of housing status and history. Disabling condition, as an overarching assessment, is required to be recorded at project entry for all persons served in Continuum projects. More specific information about disabling conditions is also presented on the next slide. Domestic violence and client location must also be collected at project entry and updated if there are changes to these elements at some point after entry. Client location, meaning the COC in which the program participant is served, is only applicable if your project participates in an HMIS that is used by multiple COCs, or if you are serving a client who is in a different COC than the COC your project uses for HMIS data collection. On the next slide, we will talk about several additional data elements that also need to be collected at project entry, but they are slightly different because they are required to be updated at later points of time. This slide shows the other data elements that are required to be collected at project entry from all program participants served in COC-funded projects. These data elements are required to track changes in family and personal characteristics over time. The data elements related to disability information must be collected at project entry, project exit, and update if additional information is identified in between. The data elements related to income and sources, non-cash benefits, and health insurance must be collected at project entry as part of an annual assessment at project exit and if changes to income are identified in between. As noted previously, when information changes after project entry, you should update it in the HMIS at the time you learn about the new information. The updated values are saved in the system distinctly, so the original value will remain. Common updates that may be needed mid-year include changes to a program participant's disability, amount and sources of cash income received, and non-cash benefits received. If a household is enrolled in your project for more than 1 year, then you must update the information on income, amount and sources, non-cash benefits, and whether the household has health insurance every year within 30 days of the anniversary of the program participant's project entry date. When this information is recorded, it has to be explicitly noted as the annual assessment update, so these values can be used to generate the annual performance report. Please note that the updated value needs to be entered into the HMIS even if there has been no change in the value since project entry or the time of the last update. 2 elements listed on this slide, project exit date and destination, are only required of program participants at project exit. Information on income, non-cash benefits, and disability must be recorded again at project exit, even if there has been no change in the information since project entry or the time of the last update. If you skip any of these data elements at project exit, they will show up as missing on the annual performance report, which will reflect poorly on your grant performance. One additional data element is not listed on the screen, and that's housing assessment at exit. This data element is only required of homelessness prevention projects funded under the COC program, since homeless prevention has not been funded in the FY 2013 competition. This slide summarizes a few of the key changes in the 2014 HMIS data standards. Client location. This is a new data element. Relationship to head of household. This is also a new data element. We'll discuss this data element further in the next training video. Length of time on the street in emergency shelter or safe haven. This is also new and will assist in determining which clients meet the HUD definition of chronic homelessness. Housing status, this was revised to relate to each of the 4 categories of homelessness per the HUD definition. It also now only is also now only required of COC-funded projects that are required to complete an annual performance report, or an APR. Destination, this is now a universal data element. Health insurance, this is a new data element. Residential move-in date, this is also a new data element, and it's only required of rapid rehousing projects. Note that not all of the HMIS data elements are required for all program components. The data elements listed on this slide are not required for all COC program components. Date of contact and date of engagement are only required of supportive services only projects that are funded to provide street outreach. Residential move-in date is only required of permanent housing rapid rehousing projects. Please note that there are several more data elements listed in the 2014 HMIS data standards that are not required for COC program-funded projects, but you may be asked to report on them if you receive funding from other federal funders such as the VA or HHS. Additionally, a local COC may opt to collect more data than is required by HUD. Please be sure that you are speaking directly with your local COC and its system administrator to confirm if there are any additional local data collection requirements that apply to your project. So what can you do now to ensure that you're collecting the correct data in HMIS and doing so during the right stage or stages of data collection? First, speak with your HMIS system administrator to be sure you understand the local plan for implementing the revised 2014 HMIS data standards. Next, meet with your staff and review the information presented today. Regardless of whether or not your agency is new to HMIS or has been entering data for several years, you should never assume that all staff are aware of and are following HUD's expectations and requirements. You should make sure that staff collecting data from clients and entering data in HMIS are aware of the changes and are clear on what each data element and response category means. You should ensure that intake, update, annual assessment, and exit data collection forms include all HMIS data elements required for your project. Remember, COC program-funded projects must begin collecting and entering data in your local HMIS according to the 2014 data standards no later than October 1st, 2014. This manual is intended to serve as a reference and provide basic guidance on HMIS data elements for COCs, HMIS lead agencies, HMIS system administrators, and users. Additionally, training materials and sample data collection forms will be available on the onecpd.info website.